Hey everyone, welcome back to Vibrations and Manifestations. I'm Jared.
And I'm Alicia, and I'm so glad we're diving into this together today.
Yeah, this is going to be a really cool one.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be exploring this idea. You know how sometimes when we fight against something we don't want, it actually seems to make it even stronger.
It really does. It's kind of a paradox, right? It feels backwards, like this weird boomerang effect.
Exactly. And this concept isn't just some new age thing. It shows up in a lot of different places, like different wisdom traditions and even the law of attraction.
Right.
So today we really want to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
Why does this happen? Why does resisting something sometimes fuel the very thing we're trying to avoid?
Yeah.
We'll be tapping into insights from Abraham Hicks and some other sources, too, to see how we can actually shift that dynamic.
Sounds good. And, a lot of you have been sharing these anxieties that you're facing right now about the government. You're feeling fearful about where it's all going. And really worried about the economy, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally understandable with everything that's going on.
It really is. I mean, these are like the bedrock of our lives,
Yeah.
right? Like when things feel unstable or even threatening when it comes to the government and the economy,
Yeah.
it's only natural that it's going to bring up a lot of worry and concern.
Yeah. And what we wanted to really dive into today with you is this question that so many of you have been asking, which is basically how can we express these concerns, and they're totally valid concerns, to our elected officials or within our communities, even with family and friends,
Yeah.
How do we express these concerns in a way that actually helps create some kind of positive change, or at the very least doesn't make things worse? Because, I think we've all had that experience where you voice your frustrations and it's like either nobody's listening or it just makes the whole situation feel even more negative.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it really brings us to this fascinating idea that we've been exploring lately,
Mm-hmm.
which is this powerful connection between where we choose to focus our attention, our internal state, like what's going on inside of us, you could almost call it our energy or vibration, and then what we actually experience and attract out of the world around us.
Okay, let's break this down a bit. So the material we've been looking at is suggesting something that's kind of counterintuitive. It's suggesting that when we're constantly pushing against the things that we don't want, it can actually, in some weird way, make those things stronger or more likely to happen. Almost like the more you fight something, the more power you give it. Have you ever felt that?
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. It does sound kind of counterintuitive, but it's pointing to this core principle about the relationship between our attention, our vibration, and what shows up in our reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The sources really emphasize that where our attention goes, our energy flows, and then that energy shapes what we experience. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
So when we're like super focused on our fears about the government or the economy, what's actually happening according to this principle?
Well, basically, whatever we're holding in our awareness, whether it's something we want or something we're afraid of, we're giving it power in our own energy field. We're casting our, vibrational votes
Yeah.
with our attention to whatever we're giving our attention to. And I think that's such a powerful way to think about it.
Yeah.
Because it really is. It's like a choice that we're making with every thought.
Yeah.
With every feeling that we have, we're actually directing energy.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because when we see something that we don't like, it's so natural to push against it,
Yeah.
to try to fight it. We want to get rid of it. But what a lot of these sources are pointing to is that very act of pushing against something might actually be making it worse.
Yeah, because again, it goes back to that idea that the universe, so to speak, doesn't necessarily differentiate between wanting and not wanting. It just sees where your attention is.
Yeah.
And if your attention is constantly on what you don't want, even if it's to try and stop it or fight it, you're still feeding it energy. Yeah.
It's like that saying, what you resist persists. And it sounds like there's a real energetic truth to that. So even if we feel, totally justified in our anger or frustration with something, the very act of focusing on it, being outraged by it, talking about it constantly, is still giving it energy.
Absolutely. And think about it too, like in terms of momentum, right? When you keep focusing on something, whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing, you build momentum in that direction. And so if you're constantly thinking about what you don't want, you're just creating more momentum towards that thing in your experience. It just becomes easier to keep thinking about it and to see more evidence of it everywhere you look.
And we've even seen this perspective applied to like political figures, right?
Yeah.
And the point here isn't about whether you agree or disagree with any particular politician, but it's more about recognizing that when so many people are focused on someone, whether it's positive attention or negative attention, it's almost like that energy contributes to their influence. It's like attention becomes its own form of currency in a way. So even if we're like totally against a certain policy or super worried about the economy, just by giving it our attention, by focusing on it, we're kind of contributing to it energetically.
That's exactly it. When we're constantly focused on these unwanted outcomes, like that government decision we hate or the fear of the economy crashing, our mental and emotional energy gets stuck there. It's like our minds get caught in this loop, just replaying those negative scenarios over and over again.
And that creates like a momentum, right? Like almost like a snowball effect. Like it just keeps building and building.
Got it. It's like this vibrational momentum that builds around that outcome that we don't want. And according to what we've been reading, this momentum can actually attract more experiences that vibe with that negativity.
Oh, wow. The sources actually talk about this in terms of being at war against this and a war against that, and how by constantly waging war, you're just keeping your attention fixated on what you don't want.
It's so true. It's like the more you resist something, the bigger it seems to get.
Yeah. It's funny because that totally resonates with me. Like when I get really worked up about something, like a political issue or whatever, I can't stop thinking about it. It's like everywhere I look, it's there. You know what I mean? On the news, in conversations with people, even just in my own head.
I totally get it. It's almost like you're tuning into that frequency, and suddenly you see it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And the sources explain this by saying that when we're constantly feeling negative emotions, we're basically tethering ourselves to that reality that we don't even like. Our focus is locked onto it, and that can actually slow down or even block the things that we do want from showing up.
Wait, so you're saying that all that energy that we spend being upset and complaining about things is actually keeping us stuck in that very situation?
That's the idea. When we resist something so hard, when we pour all our energy into fighting it, we actually make it feel more real and more persistent.
It really shows you how powerful our perspective is and how it can distort our understanding of what's really happening, especially when we're focused on the negative. It's like our fears create these limiting beliefs in our minds.
Yeah, and it all comes back to this idea of control. We think that by pushing away what we don't want, we can somehow control our reality. But it doesn't really work that way.
So you're saying that this whole idea of trying to control things by pushing away what we don't want, that's not really aligned with this law of attraction.
Right. The sources suggest that trying to control things in that way comes from a belief in exclusion. Like we can force things out of our experience. But the law of attraction is all about inclusion. Whatever you give your attention to, you're including in your vibration whether you realize it or not.
Okay, so let me try to sum this up. All that energy we spend fighting against stuff we don't like in the government or worrying about the economy, if that fight is coming from a place of fear and negativity, it's actually feeding those very things, keeping them alive in our energy field, and maybe even attracting more of the same. Did I get that right?
Exactly. You nailed it. The energy we use to fight against something we don't want is still energy directed towards it. And this has some really important implications for how we approach these issues, especially when it comes to expressing our concerns.
Okay, so let's talk about that. We're all feeling these fears about the government and the economy. We want to speak up, we want to share our opinions, but if just focusing on the negative makes it worse, how do we even approach these conversations? How can we express our concerns without adding to the negativity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It seems like what we need to do is shift our focus from dwelling on those fears and anxieties to focusing on what we actually want to see happen instead.
That's easier said than done, though, right? Especially when you feel like things are really going downhill. It almost feels easier to focus on what's wrong.
It definitely takes a conscious effort to shift your perspective. But the good news is that there are some practical strategies that we can use to help us do that. The sources we've been reading, particularly the ones on communication, offer some great advice.
Like what? Give me some examples. What are some concrete ways we can express our concerns about these big issues without just adding fuel to the fire?
One really important thing is to practice active listening. When we're having these conversations about our worries, whether it's with our representatives, with our community, or even just online, it's so important to really listen to and try to understand other people's perspectives, even if we totally disagree with them.
I see what you mean. It's about actually hearing what they're saying and understanding where they're coming from instead of just waiting for our turn to talk and push our own opinions.
Exactly. And another powerful strategy is to use open-ended questions. Instead of just making statements about what we think is wrong, we can frame our concerns as questions. For example, instead of saying, "This economic policy is a disaster waiting to happen," we could ask something like, what are the goals of this policy? Or how do you think this approach will help us overcome the challenges we're facing?
I like that. It feels less like you're shutting down the conversation and more like you're opening it up for dialogue and exploring different possibilities.
Right. It encourages a more collaborative approach. We can also try to reframe positions as interests. A lot of times our concerns are about specific policies or actions, right? But if we dig a little deeper, we can usually find the core needs and interests behind those positions. So instead of just saying, I hate this new regulation, we could try to figure out what's driving that dislike. Is it about protecting individual freedoms? Or is it about supporting economic growth?
Yeah.
And then we can focus on communicating those underlying interests instead.
That makes a lot of sense because once you understand the underlying needs and interests, it might open up new possibilities for solutions that you wouldn't have seen before.
Yeah. And it also helps to create a more collaborative mindset where everyone is working together to find common ground instead of just fighting each other.
Okay, so we've got active listening, open-ended questions, reframing positions as interests. It definitely sounds more productive and less emotionally draining than just getting into arguments all the time.
Oh, for sure. And, apart from how we communicate with others, it's also really important to manage our own internal state, especially when we're dealing with all this stress about the government and the economy.
Oh, totally. I mean, it can be so stressful and anxiety-provoking to be constantly bombarded with all that negative news and feeling like there's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly. And one of the best things you can do is to be more mindful about how much news you're consuming and set some healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
Constantly checking for updates and scrolling through social media can really take a toll on your well-being.
I know. I definitely feel way more agitated and stressed out when I'm glued to the news 24/7.
It's so easy to get sucked in.
Right.
But being intentional about when and how you consume news can make a big difference. Maybe set aside specific times during the day to check in with reputable news sources and then consciously disconnect for the rest of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that. Create some space for yourself to breathe.
Exactly. And, the sources we've been looking at, especially the ones on managing stress, they really emphasize the importance of having constructive conversations and recognizing when it's time to walk away from interactions that are just getting heated and toxic. The goal should be to understand each other, not to win an argument or prove someone wrong.
So it's okay to step away from conversation if it's just making you feel worse.
Definitely. It's not about avoiding difficult conversations altogether. It's about choosing your battles wisely and making sure you're not sacrificing your own well-being in the process. And, self-care is also incredibly important during these times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Making time for exercise, incorporating mindfulness and meditation into your routine, having a daily structure, and doing things that bring you joy and fulfillment, like spending time in nature, pursuing your hobbies, connecting with loved ones. These things are so important for building resilience and redirecting your focus away from all the negativity.
And ultimately, it sounds like a huge part of this is just taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're managing our stress, that we're finding moments of joy, that we're cultivating inner peace. Because it's hard to contribute to a more loving world when we're feeling depleted and drained ourselves.
Absolutely. It's like filling up our own cup first so that we have something to give to others. And so I think it's so important to prioritize our own well-being, to make time for the things that bring us joy, that nourish our souls. Because when we feel good, we naturally radiate that energy outwards. And that's what creates a ripple effect of positivity.
So it's not just about, trying to fix the world out there, but it's about cultivating that inner state of peace and alignment and allowing that to be our contribution.
Yeah. And trusting that, our energy, our vibration has a ripple effect, that even small acts of kindness, small moments of connection can make a difference.
And with that in mind, I wonder if we could take a few moments now for a guided meditation, just to kind of intentionally shift our focus and tap into that inner state of peace. So if you're comfortable, just allow yourself to settle into a relaxed position and take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, just release any tension, any stress, any worries that you might be holding on to. Just let them go.
Now bring your attention to your heart center, in the middle of your chest. And imagine a warm, gentle light glowing there. This is the light of your own inner being, the light of peace and love and connection. Breathe gently into that light, allowing it to expand with every inhale.
Feel that warmth spreading throughout your body, relaxing your muscles, calming your mind, and imagine that light extending outwards from your heart center, connecting you to everyone and everything around you.
Feel a sense of unity, of belonging, knowing that you are part of something much greater than yourself. And as you breathe gently, Continue to visualize that light dissolving any feelings of separation or division.
Now, in your mind's eye, begin to picture the world that you want to create. A world filled with kindness and compassion, where people treat each other with respect and understanding. See a world where diversity is celebrated and everyone feels safe and valued.
Hold that vision in your awareness and allow yourself to feel the emotions that come with it, the joy, the hope, the love. And know that by simply focusing on this vision, you are contributing to its manifestation.
As you continue to breathe deeply, remember your own power, your own ability to make a difference. You are a powerful creator. And your thoughts, your feelings, your actions all have an impact on the world around you.
So choose to focus on the good. Choose to be the change you want to see. And trust that even small acts of love and kindness can create a ripple effect of positivity that can spread far and wide.
Now, when you're ready, gently bring your attention back to the present moment, carrying that feeling of peace and connection with you. And know that you can always return to this space whenever you need to recharge, whenever you need to reconnect with your power and with the vision of the world that you want to create.
Hello, dear listeners. This is Shelley. Did you enjoy this meditation today? Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, allow yourself to carry a feeling of clarity and peace forward with you. Now that we've envisioned a world of alignment, of harmony, of positive change, let's take a moment to bring that vision into our daily reality. As you return to your day, ask yourself, how can I embody this energy? How can I engage with the world in a way that reflects this higher vibration? Maybe it's in the way you choose to express yourself, the conversations you have, or simply the thoughts you allow to take root in your mind. Rather than dwelling in frustration or fear, what if you focused on what's possible? What if, instead of resisting what you don't want, you gave your energy to what you do want? That shift in focus is powerful. It's the foundation of true transformation. So, as you step back into your life, I invite you to take one small aligned action today. Maybe it's a kind word, an intentional conversation, or simply a moment of gratitude. Trust that these small choices create ripples. They matter. You matter. Hold on to this alignment. Carry it with you and let it guide your next steps. Now let's get back to our friends, Jared and Alicia.
And remember what we talked about earlier, that our point of attraction, the vibrational state that we're always emitting, is constantly active. What it reflects our dominant thoughts and feelings. So if we're always focused on lack and fear regarding the government or the economy, that's what we're going to keep experiencing.
But if we can shift our focus to the potential solutions, to the positive possibilities, even if they seem small right now,
then we start to align ourselves with a more positive vibration. It's like tuning into a different radio station.
Yeah.
And, the sources talk about this in terms of connecting with our inner being or our source energy, which is this part of us that knows our true potential for well-being and positive outcomes. When we tune into that energy, we become a more powerful force for positive change, not through fighting and resisting, but through the power of attraction.
So it's not about ignoring the problems, but about choosing where we want to focus our energy. Instead of pushing against what we don't want, we can focus on creating what we do want.
You got it. It's a fundamental shift from pushing against to deliberately creating through the power of our attention and our intention.
Wow, okay. This is giving me a lot to think about. So the key takeaway here is that even when we have very valid fears and concerns about these big issues like the government and the economy, the way we choose to engage with those concerns really matters, both internally and in our interactions with others.
Exactly. If we're constantly pushing against negativity, even if our goal is to create positive change, we might actually be amplifying that negativity both in our own experience and in the world around us.
So it's not about ignoring the problems, but about making a conscious choice about where we direct our energy.
Absolutely. It's about becoming more aware of our own vibrational output and choosing to align ourselves with the positive outcomes that we want to see.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And for everyone listening, we encourage you to take some time this week to reflect on your own focus when it comes to these big issues. Ask yourself, where is your mental and emotional energy going?
And here's a question for you to ponder. Instead of focusing on and fighting against the things that you don't like about the government and the economy, what would it look like to get really clear about the kind of world you do want to see and then start aligning your thoughts, your words, and your actions with that vision?
That is a powerful question. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you'll continue to explore these concepts of vibrational alignment and deliberate creation.
Thanks for joining us today on Vibrations and Manifestations.
Until next time, stay curious, stay positive, and keep those vibrations high.